I ironed her blouse that night. That's how stupid I am. She said she was running late for girls' night, and I, being the ever-helpful doormat, offered to press the blouse while she did her makeup. The steam burned my fingers twice, but I still made sure every crease was perfect. She wore it out the door with a thank you kiss that didn't reach my lips, just hovered near my chin, like even her affection was running late. The moment the door clicked shut behind her, I stood there, holding the empty hanger like it was a piece of her she left behind. That's when I remembered the smartwatch in my desk drawer. I bought it 6 months ago to track my sleep, but it only reminded me that I wasn't sleeping. I hadn't worn it in weeks, but something in my gut told me to charge it. Not to count steps, but to press record. She'd worn it before. She liked how it looked, even joked it made her feel sporty. So I cleaned the screen, deleted the app logos, and slipped the recorder on quietly before handing it to her at the last minute. Track your steps tonight, I joked. See how wild girls' night really is. She laughed. You're such a nerd, Milo, she said, tossing her hair over one shoulder. This is why I love you. Right. The truth is, I wasn't suspicious because she was acting strange. I was suspicious because she was acting normal too normal, as if she'd practiced every move in front of a mirror. Her calmness was louder than any confession. So she left, and I sat on the couch. I didn't even turn on the TV. Just sat there in the silence, staring at a takeout menu I didn't have the appetite for. I kept checking the clock every 11 minutes. Exactly 11. I don't know why. At 1:43 a.m., she came home humming. That's the part that stuck with me. The humming. Like a child who'd just gotten away with sneaking dessert before dinner. She was glowing. Hair slightly messy. Blouse slightly wrinkled. The one I ironed. She leaned down and kissed me. This time on the lips. Girls' night was fun, she said. Then she went to bed like it was any other night. I didn't follow her. I opened the app. The recording was still going. And the first words I heard were hers. Oh God, I shouldn't. Then a man's voice. It's fine. He'll never know. Then a sound I'll never unhear. And that was just the beginning. I didn't sleep that night. I didn't even blink for what felt like hours. I sat there on the edge of the couch, elbows on my knees, phone in hand, listening to that cursed recording like it was a message from another dimension, one where I didn't exist. I didn't rewind. I didn't skip. I just let it play from start to finish. Her laugh. His laugh. A drink order. Background music. More giggling. Some rustling. And then the unmistakable sound of a kiss. Wet, eager, familiar, and yet completely foreign when it didn't belong to me. At one point, I whispered aloud, no, 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 as if speaking would undo what I'd heard. But it didn't. If anything, the silence that followed felt louder than the betrayal itself. After the kiss came the excuses. This doesn't count, she whispered in that soft, tipsy voice she only used when she wanted to get out of something. It's just one last wild night before I get tied down. He's too nice. Too safe. Then the guy, his voice like sandpaper and smugness, chuckled and said, then maybe I'm the reminder you need before you put the ring on. I dropped the phone. Not on purpose, just my hand let go, like my body didn't want to be a part of this anymore. I stared at the floor, at the small scuff in the hardwood near the TV stand I'd been meaning to buff out. Funny how that scuff suddenly seemed more important than my collapsing life. I stared at it for maybe 30 minutes. Eventually, I crept into the bedroom. She was already asleep, breathing softly, curled up in the blanket like a peaceful little liar. I stood there in the dark just watching her. And I hated myself for still thinking she looked beautiful. That's the part one despised the most. Even with the weight of what I'd heard, even with my chest caving in, a tiny part of me still loved her. Pathetic, right? I lay beside her but didn't close my eyes. At around 6:10 a.m., she stirred and murmured something about dreams and missing me during the night. I didn't respond. She didn't notice. She went back to sleep. When she finally woke up around 9, she stretched like a cat and asked if I wanted pancakes. Pancakes. As if this was a lazy Sunday and not the aftermath of my emotional apocalypse. I told her I wasn't hungry. She shrugged and made them anyway, humming the same tune she came home with the night before. I think it was an old Taylor Swift song. Ironic. We sat at the table in silence. She scrolled on her phone, and I just watched her. I counted every movement, every blink, every smile that wasn't meant for me. I kept asking myself if she felt anything. Guilt? Remorse? Did her body ache from pretending? Or had she gotten so good at it that even her conscience gave up? Then she looked up and asked why I was being weird. Weird? I asked, trying to keep my voice from shaking. Yeah, you're quiet. Kinda. Staring. It's weirding me out, she said with a chuckle, like I was some awkward puppy she didn't quite know what to do with. I smiled. I nodded. I said, give me a second. I stood up, went to the living room, and came back with the smartwatch in my phone. I didn't say a word. I tapped the screen, pressed play, set it on the table. At first, she looked confused. Then her brows furrowed. Then the color drained from her face like someone had pulled the plug on her entire bloodstream. She reached for the watch, but I pulled it back. You said he was just a colleague, I said quietly. She tried to speak. Her mouth opened, then closed. She looked like she'd just been slapped across time. Her hand hovered near her chest as if she forgot where her heart was supposed to be. Milo, I can explain. I stood up. Don't. Please. She followed me into the hallway. It wasn't what it sounded like. I was drunk, and You said I was safe, I snapped, my voice finally breaking. Like I was some padded room you visit when the chaos gets boring. She reached for my arm. I stepped back. I didn't yell. I didn't throw anything. I just stared at her like she was a stranger in my house who'd used all my things and slept in my bed. And then I said the one thing I never thought I'd have the guts to say. I need to leave before I hate you. She froze. And I walked out. I didn't take anything with me, not even my keys. I just needed air. Or distance. Or both. I wandered for 3 hours. When I came back, she was gone. And so was the smartwatch. She didn't just take the smartwatch. She took the envelope too, the one I kept hidden behind the spare towels in the hallway closet. I didn't even realize it was missing until I opened the linen door out of habit and saw the space where it used to be. The envelope wasn't thick. Just a few folded pages and one flash drive. But it held everything. My will, a backup of the recording, and an unsent letter I wrote to her last winter, back when I thought I might die during a rough case of pneumonia. I never gave it to her because I felt silly. Now I wish I had shredded it. At first, I thought maybe she had just run out for air like I did. But her charger was gone. Her makeup bag. Her favorite ugly socks that she used to call her emotional support pair. I know her patterns. This wasn't a walk. This was a clean exit. And still, I didn't call her. I don't know why. Maybe I thought that if she wanted to talk, she would. Maybe I was too afraid of what she'd say if I forced her to speak. I just sat there in our shared apartment, on the couch I assembled with shaking hands when we first moved in, and stared at the blank spot on the wall where her anniversary photo used to hang. I called out of work the next morning. I said I had a stomach bug. Technically, that wasn't a lie. I felt like I was rotting from the inside. My boss, a guy named Terrence who only ever eats hard-boiled eggs and protein bars, told me to take 2 days and flush it out. I laughed. He didn't get the joke. On day 2, I got a call from Kaylin's sister, Marissa. Now here's the thing, Marissa and I were never close. She always treated me like I was a temp filling in for someone better. So when she called, I nearly didn't answer. But curiosity got the better of me, and I picked up. Where's Kaylin? She demanded. No hello. I paused. I figured she was with you. She texted me some nonsense about taking time to process everything and then went completely dark. No updates. No socials. Nothing. What the hell did you do? That question hit harder than I expected. What did I do? I asked, stunned. Look, I don't care about your drama, Milo, she snapped. I've got a 10-month-old screaming in the background and a husband who thinks dishwashers clean themselves. I just want to know if she's okay. I don't know where she is, Marissa. She left after I found out about her and someone else. There was silence on the other end. Not even background baby noises. Just this slow, almost guilty inhale. You mean, she told you about the guy? I froze. Wait, you knew? Another pause. I didn't know details, but I knew something was off. She mentioned him once. Said she had questions about the wedding. I told her to talk to you. Guess she didn't. I ended the call without saying goodbye. I sat down at my desk and pulled out the drawer where we kept all our wedding planning stuff, checklists, budget notes, mood boards printed from Pinterest. All still there. Except one thing. The RSVP list was gone. Now maybe I'm paranoid, but something about that hit me weird. It felt deliberate, like she didn't want me to have it. I started flipping through drawers, boxes, folders, nothing. Her side of the closet had been cleared with surgical precision, but one of her drawers was half open, just barely. I tugged it and found something she'd clearly forgotten to grab. Her passport. It was tucked behind an old hairbrush and a melted lip balm. I opened it and stared at the expiration date like it might offer some kind of clue. Then I noticed a travel-sized envelope inside. Inside it? 2 tickets. One was for her. One was for Mr. Calvin Dunn. Who the hell was Calvin? The flight was set for Friday, just 2 days away. Destination? Vancouver. I sat there with her passport in one hand, the boarding passes in the other, and felt my whole body sink. I wasn't just cheated on. I was replaced, with a seat assignment and everything. But what broke me wasn't the ticket. It was the fact that both meals on the flight were marked vegetarian. She always told me she hated airplane veggie meals, that she'd only eat them if she was flying alone. If she was ordering them with someone else, that meant she was pretending to be someone else. Someone not with me. That meant this wasn't a fling. It was a plan, and I was never part of it. I didn't know what I was supposed to do with that information. Sit on it? Burn it? Book a flight to Vancouver and hand her the passport at the gate with a slow clap? I stared at those tickets like they were mocking me, proof that while I was washing her coffee mugs and picking up her prescription when she forgot, she was printing out boarding passes to a new life. And yet, I still hadn't told anyone. Not my parents. Not my friends. Not even Pete, my old roommate and one of the only people who ever saw Kaylin roll her eyes during arguments. I kept everything inside like some pathetic, faithful little vault. But the pressure was building. The next day, I got a text. It was from an unknown number. You weren't supposed to hear that. She didn't mean for it to go that far. That was all it said. At first, I stared at it thinking it was spam. But something about the phrasing, the tone, it felt careful. Too carefully worded, like someone trying to manage a wildfire with a spoon. I replied, heart hammering. Who is this? No answer. I waited. 3 hours later, another message came through. She's scared. Just let her go. This isn't what you think. My hands were shaking. I had just enough restraint not to call the number directly. I knew if I heard a voice, his voice, I might say something I couldn't take back. Instead, I sent one final reply. Tell her I found the tickets. This time, the silence wasn't digital, it was emotional. No pings. No dots. Nothing. That night, I started going through our shared bank account. Not because I suspected theft, at least, not at first, but because I couldn't sleep and needed something to stare at that wasn't the wall. I scrolled through transactions looking for a pattern. And sure enough, one jumped out. For weeks ago, there was a withdrawal for $2,500, labeled wedding deposit. Except, we hadn't made any new deposits. In fact, we'd been removing reservations due to guest list changes. I followed the trail and found the transfer went into a different account, one that didn't belong to either of us. Then it hit me. She wasn't just leaving. She was using our joint wedding fund to finance her escape. And she was hoping I wouldn't notice until she was 30,000 feet in the air with a complimentary ginger ale and a guy named Calvin, who apparently prefers vegetarian meals. I grabbed my coat, shoved the tickets and her passport into an envelope, and walked 2 blocks to a small copy shop that also handled shipping. The guy behind the counter was this wiry teen with bloodshot eyes and a Spider-Man hoodie. He barely looked up when I asked for express overnight service. Where's it going? He asked. I hesitated. Then I gave him her mother's address. If she wanted to run, fine. But I wasn't going to be the one holding on to her future while she buried mine. She could explain the missing passport. And if her mom asked questions, even better. By the time I got home, it was past midnight. The apartment was quiet. No Kaylin. No texts. No calls. Nothing. But there was one thing, an envelope under the door. Inside was a note. No greeting. No signature. Just 6 words, written in her handwriting. Please don't ruin this for me. I stared at it for so long, the paper started to wrinkle in my grip. That was the moment it clicked. She wasn't sorry. She wasn't even conflicted. She was begging me to stay quiet while she destroyed me. I sat with that note in my hand for what felt like an hour, flipping it over and over like maybe, on the 5th or 6th pass, it would say something different. But it didn't. Please don't ruin this for me. No apology. No hint of shame. Just a request, a plea to stay silent so she could continue slithering through the mess she'd created without consequence. And I realized something I hadn't dared admit until then. Kaylin didn't run because she was afraid of what she'd done. She ran because she believed I wouldn't do a damn thing about it. She thought I'd sit there and absorb the betrayal like some emotional sponge, then quietly disappear while she moved on with Calvin and used my money to sip wine above the clouds. And for a while, she was right. But that note? That was the crack in the dam. The next morning, I started packing. Not my things, hers. The little bits she'd left behind in her rush to vanish. A necklace on the bathroom counter. A sweater under the bed. Her dumb mug that said Future Mrs. in gold cursive. I dumped everything into a cardboard box. Taped it shut. Wrote one word on the top in black marker. Yours. I didn't ship it. Not yet. I wanted her to know I still had control over something. Even if it was just the fate of her overpriced mug and passport pouch. Around noon, my phone rang. It was an unknown number. My stomach dropped. I hesitated, then answered. Hello. Silence. Then a voice. Male. Low. Even. Milo, right? Who is this? A short pause. This is Calvin. It was like being hit in the head with a bag of bricks, quiet but devastating. His voice was exactly what I expected. Calm. Measured. A man used to getting what he wanted and never having to apologize for how he got it. I just wanted to talk, man to man, he continued. Kaylin told me everything. She said you found out and... I don't know. I just didn't want things to get messy. You mean Messier? I asked, my voice dry. He sighed like I was the one being difficult. Look, I didn't know she was engaged when this started. I'm not that kind of guy. But once I found out, I'll admit. I didn't walk away either. I laughed. Not because it was funny, because I'd hit the point where my only two options were laugh or scream. So what is this? I asked. An apology? A ceasefire? Are you calling from the airport to ask if I packed her charger? He ignored the sarcasm. She's not coming with me. That shut me up. She got cold feet, he said. Told me she needed space. Said everything was spinning out. I'm not trying to be part of some drama. I told her to handle it. I thought she had. The weirdest part? He sounded disappointed. Not arrogant. Not cruel. Just tired. I don't know what she told you, I said slowly, but she left a note begging me not to ruin it for her. And then she vanished. There was silence. Then he said, she told me you hit her. My whole body turned cold. What? That's what she said. That you lost it when you found out. That you grabbed her wrist and shoved her. Said you were not yourself. My vision blurred. That never happened, I whispered. I never touched her. I didn't think so, he muttered. But I had to ask. And then he hung up. Just like that. I stared at my reflection in the TV screen, stunned. She wasn't just running. She was rewriting the story. I don't know how long I stood there after the call ended. Maybe 10 minutes, maybe more. I kept hearing Calvin's voice repeating the words over and over in my head. She told me you hit her. That sentence cut deeper than the affair, the lie, the flight tickets, all of it. It was like Kaylin had reached into the core of who I believed I was and smeared it with mud just to make sure I couldn't climb out looking clean. I'd never even raised my voice around her. And yet now there was a version of me out there, spreading quietly through whispers and texts that painted me as dangerous. And she had planted that version. That's when I realized this wasn't about heartbreak anymore. This was about survival. If she was willing to lie like that to someone she wanted to run away with, who's to say she wouldn't tell her family the same? Or mine? Who's to say she wouldn't twist the whole narrative until I was some abusive monster, some tragic ex she had to escape from for her safety? I could already imagine the posts. The cryptic Instagram captions. Healing takes courage. Sometimes you have to walk away for your own peace. And meanwhile, I'd be here, picking up the shattered glass with my bare hands while the world clapped for her bravery. No, I wasn't going to let her steal the story. I opened my laptop and pulled up the cloud folder where I'd backed up the audio recording from her girls' night. I listened to it again, not out of obsession this time, but clarity. I needed to know what I had. The kiss was there. The moaning. Her voice saying, it's just one night, he'll never know. And Calvin saying, so we're lying to a good guy. Happens every day. It was disgusting, but it was proof. And I was going to use it. I called Pete. I hadn't spoken to him in months, not since his wedding, where Kaylin and I had gotten into a weird spat over whether I was too clingy in public. But he answered on the second ring like no time had passed at all. Milo. Hey. I need a favor. He heard it in my voice. Didn't ask questions. Just said, come over. By the time I got there, he had 2 coffees waiting and a concerned look that only old friends can give. I told him everything. From the smartwatch recording to the flight tickets to the note under my door. And then I told him about Calvin's call. He didn't blink once. When I was done, he leaned back and said, you realize she's trying to preemptively discredit you, right? It's classic. If she paints you as unstable or violent, any response you give looks like a tantrum. You become the crazy ex before you even open your mouth. I nodded slowly, jaw tight. What do I do? I asked. He pulled out his phone and started typing. We're going to make a timeline. Messages, bank statements, audio, dates. Every piece of proof you have, we build a story with it. Not to post online, yet, but to protect yourself if this gets worse. It was surreal, sitting there on his couch, surrounded by baby toys and wedding photos, plotting how to defend my character like it was a court case. But I followed his lead. We documented everything. Labeled folders. Cross-checked messages. He even suggested writing a sworn statement and keeping a printed copy in a sealed envelope. I know it sounds paranoid, he said, but if she's already making things up, you need to stay 10 steps ahead. I left his house that night with a flash drive in my pocket and something I hadn't felt in weeks, resolve. When I got home, I found my apartment eerily quiet. Dark. Like the air itself knew something had changed. I turned on the hallway light, and that's when I saw it. My box. The one I'd packed with all her belongings. It was gone, and in its place was another envelope. No name on the front. Just taped shut and placed dead center on the living room floor like a challenge. I sat down slowly, peeled it open, and pulled out a single sheet of paper. Typed. Clean. No emotion. Milo. I know you're angry, but if you do anything with that recording, I swear I'll tell everyone you hurt me. You know how people are. Who do you think they'll believe? I never wanted it to be like this, but you're not leaving me a choice. Please stop. K. I dropped the letter and just stared at it. It wasn't a threat. It was a warning. And for the first time, I wasn't scared of her anymore. I was scared of what I might become if I let her win. I didn't sleep that night either. I stayed up staring at the letter, the soft hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen the only sound keeping me tethered to reality. There was something haunting about how calculated it was, how clean and confident her threat read. Not desperation. Not remorse. Just control. She'd written it like she was finishing a business transaction. And the worst part? She was right about one thing. If I went public with the audio, people might believe her version first. That realization sat like acid in my chest. By the next morning, I'd made up my mind. I wasn't going to play defense anymore. I wasn't going to beg her not to lie, or plead for some dignity in the stories she told about me. I was going to take the one thing she didn't think I had left, initiative. I took a personal day from work. Drove across town to a little print shop that Pete recommended, one that didn't ask questions and didn't care about privacy. I handed them a USB with carefully selected pieces from the recording, not the full intimate disaster, just enough to make it clear what had happened and how calculated it was. No moaning, no personal humiliation, just the words. It's just one night, he'll never know. So we're lying to a good guy. Happens every day. I had it printed onto small, neat flyers. No names. No photos. Just a quote, a date, and one single sentence at the bottom in bold font. And he still had the ring in his pocket. The print guy asked if it was a college art project. I said sure. I picked up 200 copies. Then I drove to her yoga studio. It was an upscale place in a plaza surrounded by smoothie bars and boutique clothing stores. I'd been there with her once, back when she invited me to a couples flow session and laughed the entire time because I couldn't hold a plank without shaking. That memory stung more than it should have. I parked across the street and waited until the midday class started, when most people were already inside. I didn't need to make a scene. That wasn't the goal. The goal was a whisper. A seed. Quiet chaos. I placed the flyers under windshield wipers. On benches. Inside the stack of free local magazines by the entrance. I even slipped a few into the mailbox by the door marked employee use only. Then I left. Calm. Silent. Like fog rolling out before sunrise. When I got back home, I expected either silence or fire. Instead, I got a knock on the door. I opened it to find Marissa, Kalen's sister. She didn't speak at first. Just stood there holding one of the flyers in her hand like it was made of poison. Her eyes searched mine, probably expecting me to be disheveled or screaming or broken. Did you do this? She asked quietly. I did, I replied, just as quietly. She looked at the flyer again. She's losing it. She didn't know where it came from. She thought it was Calvin. Or me. She's not thinking straight. I leaned against the doorway. So she's still lying? Marissa hesitated. She told me you hit her, Milo. My stomach twisted. She looked me in the eyes and said it like it was gospel. And for a moment, I actually believed her. I wanted to believe her. Because she's my sister. But then I remembered something. What? She looked at me, and for the first time, her expression softened. I remembered how you spent 3 hours trying to fix a zipper on her dress before our cousin's wedding. I remembered how you canceled your guy's Vegas trip to stay home with her when she had the flu. I remembered how she once told me Milo is safe, sometimes too safe. And it hit me, she doesn't love safe. She needs someone to clean up after her chaos. And you were too honest for that. I didn't know what to say. Marissa handed me the flyer. I don't know what happens next. I don't think she even knows what she wants anymore. But if you're going to burn this down, do it with truth. Don't make yourself a villain in the process. She turned and walked away. And for the first time in weeks, I didn't feel like the weak one anymore. I sat back down at my kitchen table, poured myself a glass of water, and opened the email draft I'd been working on for days, addressed to her mother, her boss, and our wedding planner. All the people she had woven into her web. The subject line was simple. Before you hear her version. And this time, I clicked send. The messages started rolling in by evening. Not in a flood, more like slow, methodical footsteps. Her boss replied first. One line. Thank you for the clarity. I appreciate the professionalism. That was it. No drama. No judgment. Just the quiet sound of one more pillar of her story falling. Then the wedding planner. She was kinder. Said she was sorry things hadn't worked out, that she'd cancel the deposits herself and make sure I wasn't billed for anything else. She ended her email with, you deserved better. And then, much later, came the one I didn't expect. Kaylin. Not a call. Not a voicemail. A text. You made your point. Everyone knows. I'm embarrassed. Hope you're happy. I stared at those words for a long time, then locked my phone and slipped it into a drawer. Not in anger. Not even in pain. But because I had nothing left to say. Not to her. For so long, I thought closure would look like confrontation. Like shouting or tears or some dramatic moment where she begged for forgiveness or I screamed about how much she ruined. But in the end, closure was just peace, stillness, a clean inbox and a quiet apartment and no more pretending. I went for a walk the next morning. The sun was out, the sidewalks still damp from a late-night rain. I passed the diner where we used to get breakfast on Sundays. For the first time, I didn't flinch at the sight of it. Just kept walking. Later, I stopped by Pete's. He handed me a beer and nodded like he already knew everything that had happened. We didn't talk about Kaylin. We talked about nothing: sports, traffic, the weird smell in his garage. It felt good. Normal. And God, I needed normal. It took a few weeks for everything else to settle. I deleted the cloud recordings. Not out of forgiveness, but because they didn't matter anymore. I closed the joint account. Transferred my things into storage. I even took a new job offer in Madison. Nothing flashy, but it came with a fresh apartment and a view of a lake instead of the apartment where I learned what betrayal tastes like. And then, one morning, something small happened that changed everything. I got a letter. A real letter. Stamped, addressed in crooked handwriting. No return name. Inside was a short note written in blue pen. I saw your flyer at the yoga studio. Just wanted to say. I had my own Calvin once. I stayed. I shouldn't have. You were brave. Don't let anyone make you feel small for surviving. M. I still don't know who M is. But I keep that letter in my wallet now. Not because it healed anything, but because it reminded me of what I'd almost forgotten. Sometimes, the quietest voices are the ones worth listening to. These days, I'm doing okay. Better, even. I take long walks by the lake. I started reading again. Nothing heavy, just stories that don't end in courtrooms or ultimatums. I talk to Pete more. I breathe deeper. And every so often, when I feel that old aches start to creep in, I remember something Pete said the night I almost gave up. Let her go be chaos somewhere else. You're allowed to want calm. So I do. I let her go. And slowly, day by day, I'm starting to feel whole again.